So here I am with my bro, Bradley J. So, no relative of Donald J. Trump, but a fine-looking man also, and a Republican at heart. Never mind.
Thank you, sir.
Well done to you guys. So, Brad, how are you feeling?
Pretty good, pretty positive. Economy's looking good in New Zealand, I guess. OCR going down, interest rates going down, and we're expecting influx of Americans wanting to come to New Zealand. I know Bloomberg and the Post have been in touch with you regarding that. Any comments?
Yeah, I guess last time this happened when Donald J. Trump was elected the president of the free world, there was a huge spike in online activity and inquiries from the States about immigrating to New Zealand. But it didn't really convert into huge numbers, to be perfectly honest. You know, India still leads the charge at the moment, and then I think it's China and England down here, and blah 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 blah.
Yes.
So, but for the business immigration, certainly the states have been prolific, and we would expect more of the. As you know, we acted for some of the Facebook Foundation shareholders with their immigration requirements many years ago, and other legal matters here in New Zealand. So we are expecting more business. But it always takes a while to come through. And in terms of the settings right now, it's, we do note that when the guys actually find out what the rules are, there is some resistance sometimes to some of those settings. For example, the 5 tax rules and the inability to buy a residential home here to start with. We understand from quite reliable sources that our government, I guess I'd just say, are kind of starting to pull their finger out and start trying to tune our settings to make it more attractive for business migrants to come here, for regulations relating to foreign investment to be liberalized a bit. So at one stage we were the easiest country in the world to do business. We've slipped down to 32 apparently.
Yeah, oh, really?
38 out of 38. Plus the other thing would be the OIA regime. So, but I think what it is now is it's kind of almost like beggars can't be choosers. We need to get our house in order, and we need to bring in more investment and more innovation and create a really solid working environment for Kiwis.
Well, what do you think is the difference between the previous Trump administration, which increased interest in New Zealand, that didn't convert as much as what we expected, versus this time round, where you got another Trump administration coming through, where interest is again we're expecting at an all-time high again. Do you think we're going to get more conversion this time around, now that, I guess, in the previous scenario it was a Labour government, this time around it's a national government?
Well, I mean, the facts are, we're talking about there was 2,800 applications under the old investor regime. In the last 2 years, we've had 90-something applications. It's not a hang of a lot, of which 30% were Americans. The taxpayer has been funding a lot of NZT's initiatives into San Francisco and trying to get the tech guys down here. As I mentioned, having spent a month in Silicon Valley, it's not a bad place to hang out, and there's a pretty good infrastructure there with Google and LinkedIn and Facebook and Stanford University. It's a very, encouraging environment there. But yeah, I'm sure there will be more cases coming through. We're well positioned to capture that work. We're probably one of the best firms in New Zealand to assist these sort of people with all the legal issues associated with immigrating to another country. Yep. And I think, we can talk about what the investor category may morph into over the next, say, 2 quarters soon, but why don't we just talk about some of your experiences with the entrepreneur category, which we've touched on in previous interviews. I was really intrigued to find out that one of your clients, or one of the firm's clients, recently elected to go down that path instead of the active investor plus $15 million category. And I wonder if you could speak to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, look, I don't want to continue to critique the current investor visa program, but what's the difference between the old and the new investor category, and why the previous was successful and the numbers are extremely low this time around, is because under the old investor category, there was 2 demographics that it was trying to attract. One was under the $3 million category, where investors that genuinely want to move to New Zealand and do business and settle here, that catered under the $3 million category, right? While the $10 million clients would be more passive and don't want to spend as much time in New Zealand, don't want to be tax resident, but it's more of a safety net for them, for their kids in the future, right? But what ended up happening under this new category is they put everything in one, they put all their eggs in one basket essentially, where they've said, look, we're just really going to focus on really, really, really rich people that is going to come to New Zealand, and we feel like there's going to be a massive demand for that. And I think there's a gaping hole in the market where those guys who are not the uber rich, not the $100 million guys or the billionaires, that don't have a product to come or a visa pathway to come to New Zealand because they're not aware that there's an entrepreneur pathway that's still alive. And I think that is probably one of the issues, and why I think I'm quite positive at the moment that there's going to be more conversion if we can educate the migrant entrepreneurs that New Zealand, there is a pathway for residents, not just under the investor category, but through this entrepreneur pathway, right? And the case study that you're asking me about is basically had an American client, qualified under the active investor category, looked at the various investment options through the live deals, and looked at it and said, look, this is too risky. And it's not something that I'm comfortable investing in. So instead of going through that pathway of investing $5 million into a direct investment that's usually a startup company, I propose that, well, why don't you go through the entrepreneur pathway? You get to choose the business that you want, provided that it's high growth, innovative, or got export potential. So our friends from Bailey's helped us and they found a business that catered for his background. And it's something that he was comfortable with because he's quite familiar with the nature of the business.
So just to recap that summary, you're saying that they had the option of investing $5 million actively into a New Zealand kind of pre-approved, NZTE-approved company,
Yep.
Or which is of course is risky business with incredible due diligence, etc., etc.
Sure.
A big decision to make, or they could elect to go into this other category, which is not being utilized much, the entrepreneur category.
Yes.
And get residency quicker.
Relative, though, they will be able to get their permanent residence visa quicker because
Right.
the condition on the residence visa that will be issued is only for 2 years. So the processing time, obviously the entrepreneur, the active investor category is going to be a lot faster, right? Because it's a straight residence application.
Yeah.
The entrepreneur pathway is what we call a work to residence pathway, meaning you get a temporary visa first to open and set up your business. And then provided that you invest at least $500,000 and create 3 jobs, then you get create. So that's
Right.
a key component, right?
Create.
So create 3 jobs. After 6 months, you can then apply for your residence visa, right? And then in that residence visa, there's only a 2-year condition. And the condition is continue running the business and create 3 jobs.
And then sustain those 3 jobs.
And sustain those 3 jobs,
Right.
and you get your permanent residence visa after 2 years.
Yep.
While as the investor category, right, it's 4 years before you get your permanent.
Permanent residence for life after 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. So whereas the other one is 4 years.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So
What about fees and costs? And
Yeah,
so on? Is it similar or not?
and no. So obviously, right now the application fee for the investor category is $30,000, but there's a discount for Americans.
Yeah.
But under the entrepreneur category, there is an agreement between New Zealand and US that the application fee is waived, which
Wow.
usually is around $12,000.
Wow. What a
So
bonus.
yeah, so
Is that just for Americans?
I think Japan as well,
Okay.
because there's a treaty between
Okay.
other countries that
Bit of a
waives.
bonus.
Yeah, correct. So look, I think that is a really good opportunity to target not the uber wealthy, but people, entrepreneurs that genuinely want to come to New Zealand and contribute to New Zealand.
So the guys who actually want to come here, set up business, get
Yeah,
the chance
live
to
here.
employ Kiwis,
Yep.
deal with HR issues, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Get into business here on the ground.
And that particular example that I gave is actually really good because, look, that business has been trading for over 20 years. They didn't even have a website, right? So obviously it's a baby boomer type of business. Contracts have already been, set in stone,
Yeah.
generating good income of around $600,000.
Okay.
And our client was like, wow, I mean, there's opportunities in Australia for this. There's opportunities in the islands for this.
No, they
I
can
can rejuvenate. And because a lot of the Americans are very entrepreneurial, right? Like,
Yeah.
unlike New Zealanders, like pathway to wealth in New Zealand has always been, property, 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 property. While as in the States, they're all very innovative, entrepreneur. They want to get into something really big. And I think that mindset we really want to incorporate into our society
I
now.
don't think you can say all, but
Majority.
just going back though, that business, so there's a going concern they acquired.
Yep, it's an
So
existing
what's
business.
the benefit? How does that become a benefit to New Zealand? Do they have to create 3 more jobs? Or
Yeah, so basically they'll look at the existing number
Yep.
of staff,
Yep.
and then does the business have capacity to hire 3 new jobs when the applicant takes over the business?
But for this immigration thing, they have to do that.
If you want to go through the fast track option,
Yep.
you need to be able to create 3 new jobs.
Okay.
Right? And so it's very,
So you don't need to start up your own business. You can buy a business, a going concern, revitalize
Yep.
it, grow it, and make it stronger.
yes, correct. Well, that's one of the biggest reasons why this particular category has been in hiatus for a very long time, right? And if you recall in 2015, when this particular entrepreneur visa came into force, the intention was that the long-term business visa the benchmark was too low,
Yeah.
right? But they wanted to bring in something that will genuinely generate benefit to New Zealand.
Yes, I
So,
recall.
but what happened is that they established the benchmark too high and became too prescriptive, while a lot of the advisors and the applicants that were applying, it didn't catch up to what they were wanting to do. And so majority of the applications that was being submitted are new businesses, small, low quality retailers, mom and dad type of businesses, which again, it's not going to be beneficial for New Zealand, because under this pathway, what ends up happening is the main applicant has a temporary visa first to run the business, and then the partner gets an open work visa, meaning they can work anywhere, and then the children gets free education,
Right.
right? Free education, free healthcare.
For how many years?
Well, maximum up to 3 years, right?
But if they're successful forever, right?
yeah, correct.
Okay.
So
Well, gee, that's a massive saving.
100%. So at the time it was being manipulated
Oh,
because
yes, that's right.
majority of the application was
Yes.
saying, well, I've
Yeah.
got 3 kids. Why am I going to pay international fees?
Yeah.
Free education for the kids.
Yeah.
So
Which is worth more, much more.
correct. And that's what really caused the
Okay.
big decline.
Yeah, I
And
forgot about that.
and a large part of it is that if you're a new migrant coming into New Zealand, you're trying to set up a new business. And if you didn't invest or try to go to the fast track option, you can't apply for residence after 6 months. If you invested below 500,000, you have to wait for 2 years. And the requirement is you need to meet the exact forecast that you've outlined in your application, which is a really, really tall task. If you're a new migrant, you really just came into New Zealand, you brought your family, and in 2 years you're going to be profitable in a new business, it's not really realistic, right? But where I see the opportunity is that there's a lot of really good businesses in New Zealand from the baby boomer generation.
Yep.
They don't have an exit plan. There's limited capital pool,
Yeah.
right? And all these entrepreneurs, whether it's from the US, UK, Asia, they can capitalize on that, right? They could say, hey, look, especially if you're from Asia, for example,
Yeah.
I want the New Zealand brand, and
Yeah.
I want to set up a subsidiary that can complement what I'm doing in Asia. So I'm really excited about
See a big
promoting.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Okay.
because as you know, there's a consultation paper being.
Just going back to this though, are you
Yeah.
looking at any road trips or doing any offshore marketing to try and make people aware of this option, or are you just blogging, or how are you getting it out?
Well, there's really excited about the opportunity with ASEAN countries. So we're currently trying to do a webinar to start with, just to test the waters. And the Ministry of Ethnic, we're in discussion with the Ministry of Ethnic Communities on how we can test the waters through a webinar first.
Okay, so just for the viewers,
Yep.
we're talking about New Zealand's biggest trade partner, number 1 being China, number 2 Aussie, number 3 US, and we're talking about an over-reliance on China and China's orders kind of diminishing in tougher economic times, and therefore an actually strategic government pivot to increase ASEAN as our trade partner. ASEAN comprising the floundering giant, my friend, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore,
Thailand.
Malaysia, and Thailand. So, they're burgeoning and important trade partners for New Zealand. We have long histories. We have a big history of all our consulting engineers working offshore, and we have our Navy used to be headquartered in Singapore, and there's a lot of linkages. There certainly is, and there's also a lot of investment from those countries into New Zealand already for over 30 years, billions of dollars worth of hotels, for example. But just bringing it back to what you're talking about.
Well, didn't the Prime Minister just went through to Southeast Asia, including Philippines?
Oh, there's a real strategic movement right now to try and increase our penetration of those export markets, right? So you're thinking of trying to piggyback off that momentum?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, we just went. I attended a symposium probably about a month ago now, where the government is really just saying, look, which is good news for us, that we're open for business. We want to work with ASEAN countries. Of course, yes, we want to work with American countries.
Sure.
And David Seymour actually said that, look, we know what the issue is with the Overseas Investment Office. We're working really hard so that investors can invest without all the red tape.
Right.
And I'm hoping as part of that review and changes that it will reduce the requirement for investors being able to buy their family home.
I've drilled into that a bit more, and actually it's not really accurate. New Zealand is still one of the best and easiest countries to do business in. Even in countries like Spain, there's just layers and layers of bureaucracy. Here, for an overseas person to come into New Zealand, set up is really, really easy. There's only a few requirements in terms of having a New Zealand director, and only things that are over 100 million really get scrutinized by the government. So you just look around here, where we are. This is a Chinese building, that's a Chinese Indonesian building. Hong Kong owners there, Japanese owners there. It's very multicultural in terms of the ownership of the downtown. But I mean, foreign companies, it has always been very easy to set up here. And if you've got the right work ethic and everything, people do well. So actually, even though Seymour said we slipped down to 38, that was only on one factor. On the rest, we're still one of the easiest countries in the world to do business. Okay, you got to sort of make it a little bit bespoke, seeing our population's only 6 odd million, and so we're an export country. But anyway, the ASEAN thing for this firm, for Queen City Law, we have, you're from the Philippines. I speak Indonesian. We have 2 other Indonesian staff here.
Hong Kong,
Korea, China. So
Thailand as well. Actually, James is half Thai.
Oh yeah, we got half Thai. So we pretty much cover it.
Yeah.
Oh no, Singapore though. So that's really interesting. Okay, now in terms of the future, let's just go pivot back to the business migration, to the investor category that we've traditionally, for 30 years sort of led the way in New Zealand. With the current consultation that the government is doing, I note that some of our guys are involved with the Law Association and with NZAMI and the policy review and such like. We recall before the Coalition Party and National was elected, their discussions with us were, in fact, the words they used, instead of saying golden goose, they said it's a lame duck. That's what the minister said recently, in terms of the lack of numbers coming under the Active Investor Plus. And the reconfiguration of those settings to make it more attractive, we've always predicted, will include going back to a $10 million and a $5 million category. We know that there's a lot of pent-up frustration from the Chinese high net worths because of the state of their economy and some of the pressure that they've experienced from their own bureaucracy. So what's your prediction on, say, the retention of the English language restriction? Do you think it will survive, or do you think they'll get rid of it?
Well, I think they're going to be forced to remove it just because
Okay, you're picking forced to remove. Next question. Do you think they'll retain this QDII thing?
No, I don't think so, because there's no real benefit to New Zealand.
But that will make the Aussie banks much, much happier because they can't compete with the Chinese banks, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do you think they will make it, will they allow property as an investment option?
It should make sense because, as you know, I've been heavily trying to get social housing to be included there because obviously it doesn't make sense that it's not.
So currently it's prohibited?
Well, under the current policy, any property...
Yes or no, prohibited or not?
Yeah, well, technically, yes.
Okay, so we're thinking that that might be an investment class that will be permissible again for what we call obvious reasons.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, so all of those things we would agree with. Would NZTE be retained, do you think?
Well, for my personal view is that I don't think NZTE's role as it is right now is beneficial, or it's not, it doesn't outweigh the disadvantages, right? And my justification for that is it limits the amount of investment or the type of investment that they can do, and it adds red tape to the whole process, right? And majority of the investors, the reason why they're investors and they became rich, they've got their own advisors, they're really good investors in their own right. So they don't want to be prescribed that this is what you can do.
Okay.
Right? This is where you can invest.
Okay.
I can do my own due diligence.
So you're saying, like in a perfect world, you get rid of them like before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep it simple.
Okay. Well, that makes it a whole lot easier, a whole lot more simple, and a whole lot more attractive.
Yes.
You're still taking the New Zealand currency risk and other bits and pieces, but that's just the way life is, right?
Yes.
Well, then that means the tap would come on from North Asia. Because they have short memories and they'll come back despite the fact that they've been sort of out. But then, can they still get their money out? Can they bring it to New Zealand?
Well, that is going to be the issue because I don't know if the government will change its outlook or approach in terms of the money transfer from China. I mean, for me, it doesn't make sense why there's a separate regulatory framework for getting money to be considered lawfully earned, given that we've already got AML requirements that we're subject to, right? Not just
source of funds.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, the banks are subject to it, lawyers are subject to it, accountants are subject. All professionals.
No, only in New Zealand, not in Australia. Lawyers, real estate agents, accountants are excluded.
Yeah.
So we've got to overly. Anyway, they're talking about actually reviewing that and loosening things up a bit more. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. You're saying it's
why is there a separate criteria for immigration when the whole intent when the investor program was introduced, the lawful earning and money transfer, that was introduced because to protect dirty money coming to New Zealand, right? But if the AML rules are already doing that, then why are you doing a separate thing? You can't transfer any money into New Zealand unless, especially a significant amount. The banks won't receive it, right? Remember that Russian client we had? Boom, closed, right?
Just to give that some context, though, they say that last year 13,000 millionaires left China. They're predicting that over the next calendar year, 15,000 Chinese millionaires may look at other countries to take their wealth to and live in. Why wouldn't they go to Canada? Does Australia still have its golden visa?
I think that's kind of under review or on hold.
It's actually closed.
Really?
Yep. And they seem to be. They're going through a property boom in Brisbane while we're languishing here. And good for first-time buyers, sure. But anyway, just going back to this thing.
Canada. I'd like to comment on that actually. Yeah. So yesterday I was at an event with the Prime Minister speaking, and I was actually sitting next to an accountant. He came from Canada, and he's a fairly successful person, represented family offices and big shipping companies, came to New Zealand, has his own business now. And he said, look, Canada, I've lived in Vancouver for a very long time, and the economy is not looking great. If what we think in New Zealand is bad, what they have in Canada is even worse. It's similar to what's happening in the UK. There's too many migrants that have come in that aren't really generating the benefit that...
Driving taxis and stuff.
Yeah, similar issues that are in Germany and the UK and
which is actually a push factor or a pull factor for us at the moment.
Well, yeah,
but we need to be mindful of these things. But let's not get onto that issue because it's kind of
political.
Yeah, and for the woke sector, it's probably are you a woke person?
Well, I think I'm more traditional.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Well, anyway, I still don't really understand it, but okay. So let's just wrap up then in terms of so we think that New Zealand's going to be open for business in a major way for investor immigration from the first quarter of new year. We're extremely well positioned to exploit that because we've probably done more successful business immigration cases than any other law firm in the history of New Zealand over the last almost 3 decades. We also, as lawyers, compared to, say, immigration advisors, can assist with all the legal requirements of forming companies, of buying businesses, of just all the legal, the myriad of legal issues associated with actually doing stuff here in New Zealand. So we're perfect partners for people coming into the country to do these things. Plus, we've got extraordinarily well-developed networks here in Auckland, which is, the commercial engine room of New Zealand. So, you'd sort of be mad not to work with us.
Yeah.
Plus, we're good guys.
100.
Your table tennis needs a bit of work, but let's not go into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Now, what's happening this weekend? You up to anything?
Nothing special, just family. I think. Yeah. What about you, Marcus? What are you?
So tonight,
This was not a planted question whatsoever.
Tonight, Pearl Jam.
Wow.
But I'm on the wagon tonight because I've put on a bit of beef, so I'm just going to be drinking some water. And then I think next week's Coldplay.
Yeah.
And then I've managed to secure tickets to go and see Boris Johnson. The blonde ex-Prime Minister
of
from
UK.
Yeah, the one who cycles around everywhere.
Right.
Did he get booted out in the end or something?
I think so. Yeah.
Anyway, it's a David Higgins judo event.
That'll
for
be
the ruling
interesting.
elite to attend and take photos like you with the Prime Minister,
Sure.
But that is one thing about New Zealand, everything's 2 degrees of separation because we are so small, it's easy to do stuff here.
Yeah, which is a benefit, right?
Yeah. So you think we're going to go like America, you think we're going to go through a golden patch or not?
Well, I think there's a mixed view,
right?
And then again, the current feedback from the business community is just survive to 2025, right?
Yes.
Survive to 2025.
Well, it's almost 2025 now.
Well, yeah, correct. And I think there's a lot more business confidence with interest rates coming down.
Yep.
And I like the fact that the national government is really going out of their way to really promote that we're open for business with all these trips.
I like it. Well, actually, and Winston and Shane Jones.
With Singapore and Malaysia.
We haven't got onto the infrastructure side of life, but let's save that, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think what I really wanted to communicate today is that, look, there's a pathway to New Zealand that's not just under the investor program if you're an entrepreneur. There is an entrepreneur pathway. And if that doesn't suit you and you're a skilled person or want to get involved in tech in New Zealand startups, then there's a pathway for residents through the skilled migrant process, and we can help with that. We work with enterprise angels, startups, and other New Zealand venture capital as well, that we might be able to help you and link up with them and see if you can add value to any of the startup companies in New Zealand. And that's another pathway for residents. So there are multiple ways that you can come to New Zealand.
Plus, for the big fat cats who want to bring their money in here, we expect that by about February next year we'll have a new regime, and that it will be far more favourable, easier, and much more practical. We haven't seen the fine print because the fine print's not released yet. But and they always say the devil's in the detail. But hopefully, the guys who are actually putting this together will have a bit of intellectual horsepower and understand that for New Zealand we need the rules to be easy and straightforward in order to attract people here.
Yep, and I think it depends, right? If they take into account what the private sector has recommended, then it could look differently. But as it stands, what they're trying to propose, then there is really that gaping hole in the market where the entrepreneur pathway makes sense. And you want someone like us who can navigate through both the immigration and the commercial component of buying a business in New Zealand, because really the entrepreneur pathway, the safest and most practical way of getting through that program is by buying an existing business.
Right.
And we work with really good business brokers that will be able to cater for your needs in terms of the business that you're looking for, and on our part we'll help and ensure that that particular business will qualify for immigration purposes and help you with the due diligence, right? And we've got accounting firms that help. So we provide a wraparound service regarding that I don't think anyone in the industry can provide. So I'm really excited
Unique
about
position.
that. Yeah. So there's
Yeah.
really a value add proposition for us. And and with regards to skilled guys coming through, that's another, the value proposition there is that we have a lot of companies that we work with that we can introduce you to see if you can match your skill set with their needs, right? So yeah, so it's exciting times for next year, and yeah.
Hey, nice summary. What's your favorite Pearl Jam song?
Yeah, I'm not really a Pearl Jam guy.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
But Better Man's not too bad. Have you heard it? Better Man.
You're looking at me. I'm Asian, bro.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I don't,
okay.
Asians don't, and Pearl
You're
Jam don't mix.
Justin Bieber.
If I had blonde hair, blue eyes, and was smoking a lot of,
Cut it out, mate. Come on.
then
It's not lawful here.
so,
No,
yeah,
no, well,
well, medicinal, right?
medicinal, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that means you have to suffer from
I
anxiety.
do. Nah,
You're going to turn to Cheech and Chong, mate?
nah, man.
Come on.
But I know a lot of friends in high school that was into Pearl Jam.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
good mate of
Okay,
mine.
so it's your generation, not mine.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll go and try and enjoy
Yeah.
myself.
Kurt
Okay.
Cobain, right?
I just want to go in the mosh pit, mate.
Really?
Not with these hips.
I thought.
Well, rock and roll.
You're-
So look, we're open for business. We're the good guys. Come and work with us. You'll have a great time, and we won't let you down.
Yep. Thank you.